All right, you heard him there. Let's chat to Sherwin live from New York. Thank you for being with us. And Sherwin, how much resonance does US President Donald Trump's call for the death penalty seem to have in America right now?
I mean, that's a tricky question, Francis. He is, of course, the President of the United States. So when the President says something, we have to take him seriously. Here's the catch. The suspect has appeared in a Manhattan federal court yesterday before a magistrate. So this will now be a civilian matter. I don't think the Gitmo, the Guantanamo Bay reference or the referral is an option. And it would come into play if this suspect, Francis, was designated as an enemy combatant or as a terrorist fighting for foreign entities. And so that is a little murky as to the legal framework in terms of which a suspect that commits a crime in the United States could then be transferred from the mainland to Guantanamo Bay. And the difficulty is that if we refer back to the suspects that are being held at Guantanamo Bay for the attacks on September the 11th, 2001, the 9/11 attacks, those trials to this day, Francis, have not really have not taken place yet. So the concern, and we've seen this in a tweet since then from the president himself, saying that he would love to send the New York terrorists to Guantanamo, but statistically that process will take much longer than going through the federal system. So I think in a sense, yes, we take him seriously, but in a sense I think he's poured cold water on that suggestion just hours after making it.
Yeah, I can't believe Guantanamo Bay is still there. You showed us sketches from inside the court. I don't know if you were able to see if American citizens rallied outside the court, Sherwin.
I did not. I wasn't in court when he appeared. It wasn't announced. They took him sort of secretly to court. So we learnt about it afterwards, Francis. But we did see a show of sympathy and a show of New York solidarity, if you will. Last night, you saw the Empire State Building being darkened in honor of the victims, and hundreds of people gathering near the site of this tragedy. A site, incidentally, just a short walk away from the World Trade Center Memorial, to pay tribute to the victims in a nighttime vigil last night. Of course, a nighttime vigil also held in Argentina. Of course, 5 of the victims, as I mentioned in that piece, here on a sort of graduation reunion to celebrate their 30th anniversary of their high school graduation. So a lot of sympathy going out, outpouring of support to the citizens and the people of Argentina, because they really are the main victims here. I think one of the deceased is a New Yorker, another one from New Jersey. But certainly no big protests on the streets of New York. Certainly a very resilient city this is, given the tragedies that have befallen them in the past.
So the New York Marathon coming up, you were saying on the weekend, so there must be huge security concerns.
Remember 2011, I think it was, Francis, the Boston Marathon, where we had a terrorist attack. So since that attack, there has been a great deal of vigilance in terms of the spreading out of law enforcement across the city for events of this nature. We heard from Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, earlier this week, talking about how this marathon is going to go ahead in true New York style, but that there will be a very, very visible police presence, whether you're talking about snipers on rooftops, whether you're talking about visibility on the streets. New York City knows how to do events like this, Francis, so I'm sure safety will be at a premium come Sunday, particularly given the events of this week.
Finally, Sherwin, the president not only talking about Guantanamo Bay, but the diversity lotto, this green card lotto that people around the world apply for. Do you think that could be something of the past?
Francis, you might be predicting an executive order. We haven't seen one yet, but in terms of this diversity visa lottery program, it's part of the Immigration Act signed into law by George H.W. Bush in 1990. So this is legislation. It's part of an act passed by the United States Congress. And the understanding would be that if there was an act passed by Congress that legalizes the diversity visa program, then there would have to be an act of Congress to rescind that law. It doesn't take a president tweeting about it. We might see some sort of executive action. We have not seen that to date. He's not talking about that. But here's the catch. As much as the president is blaming Democrats for introducing the diversity visa program, it was signed into law through bipartisan support in the United States Congress by a Republican president, that signature signing it into law. And interestingly, there was a legislation that passed the Senate a few years ago, pushed through by a bipartisan group of senators, Francis, both Republicans, both Democrats, in terms of immigration reform. And part of that legislation was to rescind, was to do away with the diversity visa program. But unfortunately, that legislation didn't go anywhere in the House of Representatives. So there is legislation that is being promulgated by Democrats, despite the criticism from this president, to do away with this program. But due to Republican opposition, that legislation didn't go anywhere in the House. So that's where we are at this point in time.
All right, so we'll watch that space, what the president says and what happens in law, sometimes different in America at the moment. Thank you very much for your time, Sharon Bryce-Pease, reporting live from the United States, from New York.